What's going on, guys? Thanks for coming back for another episode of Teslamonial. I'm driving on my way home. I had planned on filming this video in a better scenario, but what a better time to talk about it than on the first day I owned this car. So I did finance this car. I didn't lease it. I broke down the math and I figured out what made the most sense to me. Obviously, leasing is going to give you the lower monthly payment, but what actually makes sense over the course of 3 years? So when I'm comparing a lease versus a purchase scenario, I always calculate what's my 3-year spend. How much money am I going to spend over the course of 3 years? Of course, I do this because most traditional leases are a 3-year lease, 36 months. And in the course of the 3 years, you're going to spend less money on the lease. So what's the catch? Well, you need to find out what the residual value of the car is at the end of the 3 years. What can you buy the car for at the end of the 3 years? So on this 2026 Model Y Juniper Edition, the residual value was roughly $35,000, which doesn't sound so bad. After 3 years, you can purchase this vehicle for $35,000. So in my leasing calculations, I set it up so that I was going to put $6,000 down. And the reason I set it up for $6,000 down is because I was comparing it to a 72-month finance option at the 1.99% interest rate. And the reason that I picked $6,000 is because that was the minimum rounded number that I had to put down in order to qualify for the 1.99% interest. You see, Tesla actually makes you put down a certain amount of money before they will give you the 1.99% interest rate. So in an effort to compare apples to apples, we did $6,000 down on finance, $6,000 down on lease, and compare the 3-year spend. So the leasing number was somewhere in the mid fives, like $524 per month. And then the finance number was in the mid to high sixes. But I take that number and I calculate it times 36 months, right? How much am I spending? Then I add the down payment that I do and I find out what the 3-year spend is for finance versus leasing. Now, you're obviously going to spend more money financing over 3 years than you will on the lease. So the factor here that everyone needs to pay attention to is the residual value of the $35,000, because that's what I could buy this car for at the end of 3 years. So the other factor you need to look into is how much loan will you have left on a finance, not a lease, on the finance after 36 months has gone by. So when I did that calculation, I found out that I was only going to owe roughly $25,000 after 36 months on that 72-month loan. So if I'm only going to owe $25,000 on the loan, or I've got a $35,000 residual at the end of the 3-year lease, that's a $10,000 swing. So now we have to find out how much more money I spent financing it over the course of those 3 years than I would have just leasing it. When I did the math, it was roughly $5,000 difference. So I look at it like this: $5,000 difference in the 3-year spend, but a $10,000 difference in what I would have to pay in order to keep the car. In my situation, I actually think I'm going to keep this car longer than 3 years. I don't think I'm going to just kind of give it up and get the next model, because I'm buying the brand new model almost immediately after it comes out. So if I can essentially see a $10,000 difference between what I'm going to have to buy the car out for, but a $5,000 difference in my 3-year spend, I actually still feel like I'm saving $5,000 in the course of 3 years by financing at 72 months on a 1.99% interest rate. I hope all that makes enough sense for you guys to make a decision for yourself. See you next time on Teslamonial.